Hi, everybody. I'm Kent Anderson. I'm the publisher at AAAS Science. I'm going to talk to you today about trust and transparency and just sort of the spectrum that these things can take, and some of the upsides and some of the downsides. As trying to have a little bit of a laugh with Anthony when this first started, I said, well, let's call it from business suit to birthday suit. But it actually turns out to be quite an effective analogy of how transparent we can be and some of the downsides of going full birthday suit. So first I want to talk a little bit about peer review and its function, because I think this is something we often overlook, and it's been at the heart of some of the discussions here today. There is an intrinsic value and need for independent third-party review of research, and the publication function has a very special place in moving the sciences forward. So this is a blog post I did on the Scholarly Kitchen a year ago? Yeah, a little over a year ago. And talks about what we've been told by a number of people is the value add of peer review. And my argument is that it's not a value add, it is actually the central function of publishers. And you could put whatever name you wanted on the group that does it, but they need to be funded independently, they need to function independently, and it is not a value add. There's a very good book I would recommend to you if you haven't read it by Paula Stefan called How Economics Shape Science. It is the clearest book about the exact topic it says, because it's very clear, about how economics shape science. Beautifully written. I was able to interview her after I reviewed the book. She is extremely thoughtful. I'll summarize it for you, though. Knowledge is non-excludable and non-rivalrous. I can't keep you from knowing something, and if you know it, it doesn't matter that you don't take my knowledge away. But markets typically do a poor job providing items with these characteristics, but we do a very good job. Why is that? The only way scientists can establish priority of discovery is to make their findings public. The only way to make it yours in scientific publishing is to give it away. Before that, it is non-excludable and non-rivalrous. As soon as you publish it, it's excludable, it's yours, and it's rivalrous. You were either first or you were not. This priority mechanism solves the public good problem and provides a strong incentive for scientists to share their discoveries. It also encourages the production and sharing of research. You can't reward people in science for just effort, because you can't measure it. You can't monitor scientists. Things are discovered driving home at night in the reflection of a cat's eyes. It's a eureka moment. The priority system solves this, and it rewards people for achievement rather than effort. It also discourages shirking, because you know that you have to get to excludable, rivalrous information, so you work hard. There are a lot of prizes in the priority system, but most of them are difficult to come by and not very public, or they come sporadically. Tenure, patents, prizes, grants. Publication is the only one that is frequent, common, achievable, public, informs all the others. That's why it's the bedrock, and that's why it's so important. So peer review refines the priority system, and this includes editorial review. I am a firm believer, having worked at a number of journals with incredible full-time editors or devoted academic editors, that peer reviewers are a part of the system, but they are not the system in and of itself. There's also the branding and the reputations within the publishing environment that shape and add color to all of these various pieces. Publication with certain brands can advance a career significantly. And publisher infrastructure and management of peer review is not value add, but is essential to the academic endeavor. Editors are part of the process. You might remember there was a time when, earlier this year, where there was a sexist peer reviewer, and the editors ran away from it. And this was a nice blog post about this. Editors are not supposed to be a mere relay service shuttling messages between the authors and the reviewers. Relies on a balanced tension with the editors at the centripetal point of that. Editorship is a scientific activity. Peer review tends typically refines the priority system through novelty, quality, and importance. Is it the first, best, or last? And then we get to the importance of independence. And we talked earlier about profit margins and funding. Frankly, I'd rather have strong publishers who don't really give a hoot about whether funders pay them or not, or libraries pay them or not, because that's how you get into corruption. So funders are foundations, corporations, governments, institutions, or individuals. Individuals can fund research. Authors, individuals, and more collaborations. But they both are facing, whatever form they take, one essential question. How good is it? How good is what I produced? How good is this research? Now, there's an imperfect system, and it will always be imperfect, to answer this question, and that's journals and all the infrastructure that goes into those. By the way, to answer an earlier question, BMW's monetary profits from last year can buy Elsevier 1 1/3 times over. So 10% profit margin, but just with that, they could buy Elsevier 1 1/3 times over. So percentages are percentages. The importance of peer review and enhanced priority system outside of funders and academia. It's one of my, I've been very open about this, a problem with eLife. They haven't really stumbled into it yet, so good for them. But structurally, they're funded by a funder. So the real potential for corruption exists there. Publishing has traditionally created independent revenue sources, but as we move more to an author pays model, that starts to erode. Typical forms of transparency. So now we're going to get into our haberdashery. Authors and affiliations, materials and methods, results and data, disclosures of competing or conflicting interests, research roles, who did what, who contributed what, and contact information for the corresponding author. All this and more should be included when possible. The problem is they've all been hacked. There are anecdotes where every single one of these has been hacked, usually multiple in one single instance. So transparency only goes so far. It can help detect these things, though. So that's why we're moving more away from a business suit and I think into more business casual. Oh, it gets better. And business casual is the norm. One of the reasons that we acquired peer review evaluation in July is to enhance the transparency, to not only have those forms of transparency, but to show more about what actually goes on in peer review, because it is a vital, central role that publishers serve. And so participating journals you can click on a link and you get to see how many rounds of review, what roles reviewed it for any paper. And this is being rolled out next month on Science and its sister journals. Now we get into one step beyond business casual, which we'll call street sloppy. And two of our celebrities exhibiting it proudly. Jack Black will be the one I'm going to choose to roll through these slides. But this is where we get into some areas that maybe are a little bit more questionable about how buttoned up we are with our peer review practices. So the Faculty of 1,000 research approach is perhaps a little street sloppy, where the idea is authors pay upon publication. It's not accepted until it gets a certain amount of external peer review, but can those be unapproved? Can it be unindexed if it's unapproved? And we did a study, and it's a platform. We have no academic editors making acceptance, rejection decisions, so they don't have academic editors. We did a little study a couple of years ago. Some of the major medical journals helped us with this, comparing the feedback in depth and just by using words as a proxy for intensity and depth of feedback. And you'll notice that the medical journals, even if you're rejected, you got a lot more feedback from standard peer review than you did from Faculty of 1,000 peer review. Most of the papers got less than 200 words. Most of the approved got less than 200 words of feedback. So this is one of the reasons why we need a little bit better wardrobe, is because part of the role of even rejecting papers is improving them. If a journal is not improving them through some sort of review, then I think there's an obligation that's not been met if they've at least taken it into the review system. So one of the papers that also came up at this time was a PLOS One paper, and it happened to hit on something that I know very well, which is journal advertising. So this was a paper that from Canadian researchers, they had gone to a convenient sample of library copies of the major medical journals at Canadian libraries and inferred from what they saw there that advertising was X, Y, and Z. They understood nothing about split runs, about Canadian mailings versus domestic mailings, about oncology splits, about how advertising is purchased, about how site licenses, they understood nothing. And no peer reviewer in PLOS One's gallery had any understanding of this topic either, yet it was sent out, peer-reviewed, and published. So my conclusion was this didn't even meet their methodologically sound criteria because it didn't go to qualified peer reviewers. So this is where we get into a sort of a problem as far as accountability and responsibility, and it also makes me wonder, this was one that I happen to know something about, at the volume that they're publishing, how often does this happen? And we talked earlier today about some of the retraction trends among the top-tier journals, and are those retraction trends due to the fact that their audiences, they publish so little compared to a large volume journal, and their audience pays such close attention that problems are caught at a higher rate. Where you have a vast, fast-moving stream, you're not going to be able to catch as many problems going through it, especially if you aren't, if not many people are actually reading it. So now we get to birthday suit. You won't believe when you put birthday suit in Google. It took a little while to get to this, and a lot of, sorry. So one of the problems is that research is not an apolitical thing currently, especially when it comes to certain topics, global warming being one of the major ones. And so you see a lot of things going on where people, you might remember when the emails of researchers in the UK were hacked, and it was the ClimateGate instance. And certain things were distilled out of there by global warming skeptics in order to embarrass the researchers and discredit their research. And it led to cartoons like this, and this. And the same thing is going on currently in the United States, where the House, the head of the Science and Technology Committee, is basically going and under the guise of transparency, saying that all of the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration scientists should turn over all of their emails, all of their correspondence related to their climate research, so that they can achieve full transparency. That's birthday suit. This is something written by a blogger arguing that by refusing this, the executive director of the National Center for Science Education has placed herself squarely against scientific transparency. Her response is interesting. To her, this is attacking the scientists by trying to look in their email accounts to find things where scientists might legitimately disagree or say things in shorthand that they could pull out, put in the press, and embarrass them with. So do we need to go that far? The CEO of a coal company thanks the head of the U.S. Science and Technology Committee, Lamar Smith, and then declared that the American Meteorology Association, that's 2 days in a row I can't say that, and Union of Concerned Scientists need to be investigated. Okay? Again, under the guise of transparency. I'm proud that the organization I work for is fighting this and saying pay attention to the science and get your nose out of the labs. So we have this spectrum, right? Business suit to birthday suit. So the business suit, it's still very useful, has many strengths, it's important, and editors matter. A lot of people really want to publish in the journals that wear business suits. But business casual is okay. It's more modern. It retains many of the strengths of the business suit. It's a little more reassuring, maybe, and a little more approachable. So we can go in that direction. Probably nothing, no severe downsides. Then we get into what these celebrities have, where they obviously are suffering from a loss of perspective. They're unaware of the risks that they're running. They have no shame or humility. They definitely could do better. And they're doing it basically because they're selfish. Okay? They aren't thinking about us having to look at Jack Black in black gym shorts and jacket like that. And then you get to the birthday suit, where simply it's naive and simplistic, untrained, and worse, exploitable. Okay? Because you have a lot of forces in the scientific world that are looking to undermine valid scientific findings for political or financial gain. And it's a tricky social, human endeavor, science, and we can't give in to these kinds of things. So I would say I would take those off the table. I would say that we can go with the business suit and the business casual, and we'll be just fine. So, and it turns out I was faster than I thought, Anthony.
Very much faster.
Yeah. So excellent. I look forward to it. I'm staying in my suit, though.